Hi, welcome to Classic Guitar Rock. Jeremy back in the basement. We are going to start a series of lessons on the major scale modes. Players like Randy Rhoads, even Dimebag Darrell, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai have a really solid understanding of these modes and how to use them. These are also used by a lot of jazz and fusion guitarists. But learning the major scale modes will really open up your ability to solo and not just solo, but to actually write songs. So having a good understanding of the modes is, I think, really a key to being a great lead guitar player. So let's get started. All right, I want to start out on the piano, and I'll tell you right up front, I'm not a piano player, but the reason I want to use the piano is it's a little easier to show the relationship of the modes on the piano than on the guitar, at least at the beginning, and we'll switch over to the guitar here shortly. I'm going to start at middle C, and I'm just going to play a C major scale. It looks like this: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Nice and easy because there's no black notes, right? That's why pianists love the key of C. There's none of those black notes you have to mess with. When you're learning the piano, you start in the key of C because it's easier. What I really want to look at are the intervals, or the spaces, or not spaces, the distance between each note of that scale. So for the C major scale, I would play the C, and then I have a whole step because I'm skipping the black key. So it's a whole step, then another whole step, then just a half step because I'm not skipping a black key there, right? Half step, whole step, or I'm sorry, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Let me do that again without messing up this time. So for C, it would be C, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That is the interval sequence of the C major scale. Now, if I started with any other note and played that same sequence, then it would still be a major scale. If I would have started at D and played the same intervals, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, then it would be a D major scale. In fact, let's just try that. Ready? Here is starting at D. Now it's going to look different with D because I'm not going to be able to do it all on white keys. But let's show you what it would look like. So in D, it would go like this: D major scale. Okay, we're going to play a D major scale. D, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. It's a D major scale. So whatever note I start with, if I follow it with those same intervals, it's going to be a major scale or an Ionian mode. So the first mode is basically just the major scale, and we call it the Ionian mode. But let's say I stay on the white keys. So I'm going to keep all the notes of the C major scale. Okay, I'm just going to use those notes, but let's say I just start from a different place in the scale. So let's start at D and just play the white notes. Okay, it's the same notes, but I'm starting in a different place, and so what does that do to my intervals? So starting at D, now all of a sudden, instead of my intervals being whole step, half step, whole step, half step, they are now, there's the D, the root there, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. That interval sequence is no longer a C major scale. That is now the D, because we started at D, D Dorian mode. All right, that's our second mode, the Dorian mode. And isn't it interesting how I'm playing the exact same notes from the C major scale, but because I'm playing them against a D it's a different tonality. Now again, I'm not a piano player, but just hear the difference. I'm going to play, just noodle around with these notes in the D Dorian mode. All right? All of a sudden, it sounds minor, doesn't it? That's because of those, the intervals are different. I'm playing it against a D minor chord instead of a C chord, but it's still from the same major scale, the same notes. Let's do that same thing back in C. But listen to what the tonality will be on this. See, a lot different sound. Again, picking from the same notes, but because of the intervals and the relationship with that chord, it sounded major. And that's pretty cool. So basically, in the key of C, while I'm playing in C, I at any given time could also be playing a D Dorian, an E Phrygian, an F Lydian, a G Mixolydian, an A Aeolian, or a B Locrian. All of those notes are found within the C major scale. It just depends on where you're starting from. So let's move to the guitar now and talk about the things we did on the piano keyboard on the guitar. Instead of playing in C, I'm going to play in G, and the reason I'm playing in G is I'll have more of the neck to show you if I do it in G. So in G, remember what was our interval sequence for the major scale? Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So I'm going to take a G and I'm going to play that interval sequence. G, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, that's a G major scale on one string. Now it would be a little awkward to play your solos on a one string scale. You could do it, but that's why we move those scales across the neck. The traditional major scale pattern would look like this. Okay, let me do that one more time. So that's a one octave major scale in the key of G. Now what we usually do is we play that across all 6 strings, so it would be a 2 octave pattern. And it basically starts over from here. All right, so there's a 2 octave scale. That one shape, just like the pentatonic patterns that we've learned earlier, can be moved all over. Okay, so whatever root note I put there, that's what key I'm in. I could play that same shape in A, an A major, B major, C major, D major. Okay? So that is the first pattern that we will learn. Now what we're going to see shortly is just like when we learn the pentatonic boxes, there are 5 fingering boxes that we will learn for the major scale modes as well. Once we've learned those 5 boxes, we will know all 7 of the major scale modes, and we will be able to play them in any key. And the nice thing is, they're always going to be played in the same order, one after another. It just it depends on which box you start with, if that makes sense. that will determine the mode that you're in. That might sound confusing right now, but it's really cool as we learn those 5 boxes. That will give us the ability to play all 7 of those modes in any key, anywhere on the neck, and that really starts to open up your lead playing. So the first pattern is just the beginning. So next lesson, we'll spend a little more time on that first pattern. We'll add the second pattern, and you'll start to see how each of these fit into playing in each of the different modes. Spend some time practicing that first major shape just to get comfortable with it, because we're going to add a second shape next time, and we'll be building on from that. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Classic Guitar Rock. Thanks. Bye-bye.